There's a new familiar face, Mr. Shoemate. How are you? You'll figure out the mute button eventually, Glenn. It takes time.
It does, Eddie. It does. Good to see you.
You too. All right.
I have to dress my necklace like India, though, I think.
Got it.
How you doing, Glenn?
I'm fine. Great to see you.
Too.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to give it a few more moments for folks to join, okay? And Glenn, I'll welcome you too. So, hey.
Well, thank you. All right. Good afternoon.
Chair Taylor, with your permission, we have about 9 members on the call. Would you like me to begin? It is a quorum.
If we have a quorum, let's get started, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Agree? Yeah.
So good afternoon, everyone. Based on who I see on the Zoom, it appears that we do have a quorum, as I just said to Chair Taylor. So I'm now going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to begin with taking a roll call. Eddie Taylor.
Here.
Danielle Sidnor. Danielle's not here at the moment. Stephen Cavanis.
Here.
Heidi Gillette, as she's excused for today. Randy McShepard. Randy has not yet joined. India Pierce Lee.
Present.
Good afternoon. Reverend Kenneth Chalker.
Here.
Hi there. Levine Ross.
Hello.
Levine.
Here.
Hi.
Hi.
Marcia Maccabee. She has not yet joined. Cordell Stokes has an excused absence. Janice Contreras. She has not yet joined. Victor Ruiz.
Here.
Hi there. Yanela Sims. Don't see Yanela yet. Habiba Grimes.
Here.
Hi there. Sheila Wright will be joining us later. Rabbi Joshua Caruso.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Josh. And Glenn Shoemate.
Here.
Everyone, please join me in welcoming Glenn Shoemate as the newest member of the Citizens Advisory Council on Equity. Member Shoemate's appointment to serve the unexpired term ending July 14th, 2022 was adopted at the June 8th Cuyahoga County Council meeting. For those of us who do not know Mr. Shoemate, he serves as the Executive President of the Construction Employers Association, or CEA. He's also the Executive Director of Contractor Assistance Association and oversees education, marketing, membership, inclusion, and workforce programs. He serves on community diversity and inclusion committees, as well as state and local education and workforce committees. Prior to his position with CEA, Glenn was president of the Call and Post newspaper and vice president of tourism, development, and marketing for the Greater Cleveland Convention and Visitors Bureau. Glenn graduated from the University of Toledo in business and has continued his business training at Cleveland State University and CACE Western Reserve University. Glenn, I again want to publicly welcome you and tell you how much I'm looking forward to working with you in this new role. So welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I look forward to working with everyone.
Great. So I'm going to take a moment. I'd like to take, for a moment of silence, I'd like to do more of a moment of reflection today. And I'd like to take a moment to reflect upon the findings of a recent study conducted by Cleveland State University showing racial disparity in traffic stops in Cleveland Heights. The city of Cleveland Heights began collecting data regarding race in 2019 and turned the information over to CSU's Diversity Institute for analysis. The findings showed Black drivers were 3 times more likely to get pulled over as compared to white motorists. Out of the 11,237 traffic stops where race was denoted, 66% were Black, 26% were white, 2% were Asian, and 6% were either other or unknown. Of the 4,287 traffic citations issued, 66.5% of the recipients were Black, and those ultimately arrested, 92% were Black. The study notes the city's 2020 census population of 44,571 is about 50% white and 50% people of color, with 41% of that 50 being Black people. The study's findings stated, quote, based on the data provided and the research methods used to measure the city's driving population, African Americans are disproportionately the subject of traffic stops in Cleveland Heights, close quotes. In discussions following the release of the study, members of the Cleveland Heights City Council and the police chief discussed next steps to address the disparities exposed. The City Council's Public Safety and Health Committee is planning to schedule further meetings on the issue, and the city's new 25-member Racial Justice Task Force is charged with further researching the disparities. Data collected in major cities throughout the nation show at least some disparity in traffic stops. For example, in Minneapolis, Black drivers are 5 times more likely to be stopped by police, and in Chicago and San Francisco, Black drivers are 4 times more likely to be stopped. The consequences of racial disparities in traffic stops flow throughout the criminal justice system. Failure to pay fines and fees associated with traffic violations can result in the suspension of driver's licenses and the issuance of arrest warrants. And as we all know, and as I highlighted in my last reflection last month, many traffic stops also unfortunately end in tragic and fatal outcomes. Let's take a moment of silence and reflect upon the importance of reviewing policies or policing strategies, which disproportionately impact the lives of Black Americans. Since our meeting last month, we have not received any public comments submitted via email to equity@cuyahogacounty.us. Next, I'm going to move to the message from the executive. County Executive Budish, would you like to please open our meeting with some comments? Can you please unmute County Executive Budish?
Yes, I've only been doing this for a year and a half and I still haven't learned to unmute. I'm waiting for my notes to come walking through the door. So if you give me a minute, but I do want to take a moment to welcome Glenn as well. Thank you very much. I know Glenn will be a great addition to this committee. So I wanted to just take a minute and talk about Juneteenth and what's happening locally. There's a Juneteenth Festival this Saturday from 12 to 10 p.m., noon to 10. It'll be at Mall C, and the county is hosting an informational booth. We'll have representatives from our Health and Human Services and our HR department and our development department. And there'll be a lot of other things going on with respect to Juneteenth. I think there'll be some music, entertainment, and other things on the mall. We are doing 2 blogs giving the history behind Juneteenth and talking about how people can support the education and celebration of Juneteenth. We've got a banner on our county website homepage that links to the blogs. I'm putting out a statement for Juneteenth. We're doing a digital board. We recorded a video, which we will put out on social media, that Councilwoman Chantel Brown, it will be explaining the importance and history of Juneteenth. we're certainly talking to our employees, putting out messages to our employees about the importance of Juneteenth. So anyhow, I appreciated the fact that our county council supported our effort to make Juneteenth a holiday for our employees. The holiday will be on Friday since we don't work generally on Saturdays, and Juneteenth falls on a Saturday this year. So that's my brief comments. And again, thanks to this committee for doing.
You have a charger?
Well, you're on mute, Naila.
Oh, I too have been doing this for a year and a half. Thank
We
you.
all took the
Taylor.
same class this week.
I know. Armin and I have been doing it together for a year and a half.
Right.
I'd like the minutes to reflect that Randall McShepherd as well as Danielle Sidnor have both joined our meeting. Chair Taylor, would you like to address the council?
Yeah, just a few things. Glenn, I know we give you a chance to say hi, and Naila read your bio, but any comments you want to make or read into the record? It wasn't really a request. I'm asking you to make comments, if you wouldn't mind. Just
All right. Well, thank you. I am pleased to serve with the rest of this council. I think it's certainly very important work. I appreciate the consideration by our county executive and the debriefing by Clerk Byrd. It was helpful to learn more about process and work. And I think I know a lot of the advisory council members, and I've had some chance to review your initial report and some of the direction in terms of the approach that you've taken. And I just want to say I look forward to working with you to try to assist equity within our region, certainly within Cuyahoga County, but even more so throughout Northeastern Ohio. The one thing I didn't necessarily say, but I think Danielle knows this, and I have to give a shout out to my hometown of Sandusky, which is an area that I'm pleased to be from. But, you know, I think I've been in Cleveland, Cuyahoga County for about 30 years. And, you know, I've worked to try to create opportunity with the Indians from, you know, community outreach and probably note of inclusion, but really just trying to make Cleveland a better place. And that's really been my career profession here, is really how do we improve the opportunities and the livelihood of citizens within our county, within our region. So again, pleased to work with all of you to help achieve those goals.
All right, thank you, Glenn. And I won't provide the same opportunity for others who know you to good or bad things. I'm sure they'd mostly be good, but they'll thank you on their own later. But as most of you, I've known Glenn for a long time and consider him a good friend. And he's right, he's worked for the betterment of this community for a bunch of years, even well before his days at what was then the Convention and Visitors Bureau and all that work. So thank you, Mr. Shumate, for joining us, and thank you for this fine selection, County Executive Budish. I do, as we did last time, want to open it up for any thoughts or comments on Clerk Byrd's opening reflection. If there are no comments, I get it. Last time around, there was a pointed conversation around that reflection. Here's what I would say here. The traffic stop issue is layered, right? It's complicated. We know that it is. There's lots of ways to interpret these things. What is not disputable, of course, is the rate at which Blacks are stopped in a way that's significantly higher. But again, these things are complicated, convoluted, and multi-layered. So if folks want to comment briefly and professionally, certainly do so. The other thing I'd say is thank you, County Executive, for the push, the efforts for the Juneteenth celebration. The reason for the celebration has certainly been brought into the consciousness of this country, I'd say, more directly over the last several years. And now the celebrations continue, I think, at a more frequent pace across the country. But if folks have questions or thoughts around Juneteenth and the basis, the reasons for this celebration and the level at which it's been heightened in this county. I think it's worth commenting on if folks have questions. And finally, I would say for those who have asked the county executives to spend some time, we won't do it here, but spend some time talking about the rescue, the money from the federal government. We have smaller sessions discussed, and maybe at some point there's a sort of a public conversation around it. But the real point is thank you, county executive, for taking the time to talk in detail with this group on the subject. I'm sure folks will find it, as they have already, useful. So I will stop there and I'll open it up to any freewheeling thoughts that folks have before we move into the meat, the report part of our agenda. Any thoughts, comments from anyone?
Chair Taylor.
Please, I think Danielle is up. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to thank the county executive for the efforts around Juneteenth. And this is just something that I'm sharing in every space that I'm in. As we continue to move towards acceptance of celebration, I hope that we also start to think about what it means for folks to truly be free in spaces and to really be able to participate at an equal level, thinking about all the activities that are happening across the county. The downtown activity is one of them, but a lot of activities are happening in various neighborhoods, and thinking about how we also stretch across the county to activate and touch all those different celebrations that are going on, because what we know for many citizens in our county, they don't have sometimes the transportation and ability to get down to the city square, so to speak, and may find it easier to participate in things that are happening in their neighborhoods. And finally, the thing that I would add to that is thinking about how we move towards conversations about reparations, because I think having Juneteenth conversations solely at the level of celebration doesn't get at really providing equity, nor does it get at providing the relief that Black citizens across this country so neededly deserve.
Yeah, yep. Thank you. I'm sorry, Reverend Chalker.
And Chair Taylor, I simply want to make the comment that I hope our committee continues to think about ways in which we confront the denial of race theory, its impact on, and I use that term because it's being bandied about so often, but the information that is so necessary for particularly the white community, and their lack of knowledge of the kind of systemic oppression and violence against African-American people that has occurred in this country, and the need for us to put this information out there and to be strong and resilient in our opposition in any way we can to the kinds of comments that deny that this kind of systemic racism exists in our community and our country. And I am appreciative of our efforts thus far, but I hope that we continue to be a vocal group in opposing and challenging the kind of information or the kind of reaction from particularly white communities that want to suggest that race theory and understanding this history is not important.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Chalker. Any other comments? Any response to the reflection at all?
Well, I do have, Mr. Chair, I do have a comment. I do echo what everyone said. I guess my comment and or question has to do with sort of the pandemic and sort of coming out of the pandemic, and the article that was released over the weekend about the Hampton Inn individuals being housed there. And, I'm not sure if the county executive wants to maybe provide, I guess, perspective, maybe a link to that might not have been shared in the article. Because I think that from what I understand, that was a move because of the pandemic and we needed to address things quickly. And so, recognizing it still remains an issue, how do we cope with those challenges? And I at least wanted to allow you to sort of speak in this forum, given that, someone spoke on it and gave their opinion. I want to understand your position and the county's position.
Sure. I don't know if Chairman, you want me to respond?
Please, it's up to you, certainly, but yes, if you'd like to.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond. So for those of you who didn't see what the article that Mr. Cavanis is talking about, it was an article that was, how do I put it politically correctly? Anyhow, the point was that we were being told by the City of Independence, where we had moved some of the homeless folks out of our shelter into a hotel there, that they couldn't remain there, basically. So let me give a little background. When the pandemic struck, we put a high priority in protecting our homeless population, especially since they were largely in a congregate setting, meaning the homeless shelter. And as we've seen since, it was a good move to reduce the population in the homeless shelter, because in other places, COVID went through homeless shelters quickly and with serious harm to the residents there. We didn't wait. We immediately set out to try to protect people who were homeless. We did a number of things. One was we ended up distributing about 1 million items of personal protective equipment to people who are homeless. We put sanitation stations out in the community so that hand washing and other basic needs could be met for homeless people who didn't want to go into a shelter or other location. We provided health screenings, we provided testing, and more recently, we've been providing vaccines to homeless people. But probably the main thing we did was decide to reduce the population in the homeless shelter by half. So we ended up spending so far over about $7.5 million to pay for hotel rooms. We don't pay directly. We contracted with Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry, and they administer the homeless program. So they're the ones that contracted with hotels to relocate some of the homeless people into hotel rooms. We ended up paying for 43,000 nights of shelter. We provided 250,000 meals and thousands of COVID tests, as I mentioned. So we were the ones that initiated the program to house people who are homeless in hotels so that they could be segregated. We had some hotels that were designated for people coming out of hospitals that needed a safe place to go to recover if they had COVID. And our program was very, very successful. We kept the incidence of COVID in the homeless population below about 8%, which is a lot less than the general population. So we were very pleased about that. This was never intended to be a permanent solution to the homeless situation. We couldn't keep people in hotels forever, but it was designed to deal with the emergency. In April, the City of Independence decided that they weren't going to allow a hotel in Independence to continue to house homeless folks. They had the Ohio law behind them. Ohio law says that you can't stay in a hotel room that doesn't have a kitchen for more than 30 days. And Independence also was viewing, I think, our lawyers indicated credibly that by renting the entire hotel for homeless folks, you were basically turning it into a homeless shelter, and the zoning didn't support that. So basically they said, we're going to enforce the law unless you move people out. We spoke with the city. We were able to get them to delay taking action for 30 to 60 days while we made other arrangements for people. Contrary to the article, we did not put people out on the street. That is totally ridiculous. There's still people in the Independence Hotel, and we're in the process as we speak of making other arrangements with hotels and other locations. So while the article would suggest that we are heartless, terrible people in the county, in fact, we did more, I think, for people who are homeless in Cuyahoga County than most other places around the state and the country. And we're very proud of how we've managed the homeless population. We've got some potential. We've been working on ideas that will not be temporary, but will be permanent. We're not yet in a position to announce those, but we're moving in that direction. As I said, this was never intended to be a permanent solution. In fact, the contract with the hotel in Independence expired in August anyhow. So that was the situation. And unfortunately, the article did not paint a full picture of what was happening. Does that answer your question, Mr. Cavalos?
Yes, thank you, County Executive. Appreciate it.
Well, yeah, I'm sure the article did, as you said, County Executive, leave out a number of details. I had to look up NIMBYism. Maybe the rest of you were more aware, but I had no idea that it was an actual word. So that was a discovery, despite the suggested inaccuracies. Any other comments?
The moral of the story is don't believe everything you read in the newspaper.
Or the digital version either, right? For some of us, because clearly it seemed that there was, look, on the front end, it was a Herculean effort and it was the right thing to do. But again, I don't have all the details, but to suggest this was a permanent solution seems to be short-sighted, because I'm not sure how you could make that, whether it's zoning or otherwise, how you can make that a permanent solution for what has become an intractable problem in our community, or communities across the country, quite honestly. So that part I agree with. Okay, any other thoughts, folks? Anything on your minds before we move into the heart of the agenda as we described?
It touches a button in me, Chairman Taylor. For 15, 20 years, First Church Cleveland, of which I was the senior pastor at the time, we operated the county homeless shelter for men and women 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's so difficult to, I won't spend a lot of time talking, you'll be glad, but just to say that the experience often revealed that various communities in Cuyahoga County would bring homeless people to the city so that they did not have to deal with them in their local communities. And to reverse this as if somehow, just to continue that discussion as if we are segregating people, and to turn it on its face as if this is an intended policy, is so difficult to read and to deal with. And I wish there was a way that we could somehow creatively and cogently have a way of responding to these kinds of attacks, as that article did, in my opinion, this past Saturday.
Reverend, thank you for that. No, you didn't go on too long, and thank you for that perspective, the historical perspective you had, sort of being in this area, having lived it and trying to solve the problem directly. So thank you very much for that. Okay, All right, so we will move into the agenda. Ayla, you want to?
Sure. So let me first let the minutes reflect that Janice Contreras and Yanela Sims have joined our meeting. I have also received word from Marcia Maccabee. Unfortunately, she is unable to attend due to an emergency that has occurred, a work-related emergency. So I'm going to move now to the approval of the minutes. On May 12th, 2021, minutes from the May 10th, 2021 meeting were distributed for your review and comment. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve. India.
Thank you. A motion made by member Pierce Lee. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Is there any discussion about the minutes? Hearing no discussion, are all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries and the minutes are accepted. Now I'm going to move to the analytics and reporting regarding online outreach. During our last public meeting, there was a request for some analytic information regarding the CACE's online outreach efforts. My staff worked with the County Department of Communications to gather the information requested. The website information was presented in unique page views on the Fighting Structural Racism page, which links directly to CACE's homepage and the CACE's status report to the community. The page views as of May 9th, 2021 were as follows. For the Fighting Structural Racism webpage, there were 4,583 unique page views. As far as the CACE's homepage and related subpages, there were 1,515 unique page views. And for the status report to the community, there have been 1,023 unique page views. We also gathered the number of views for each of the CACE's first 8 public meetings, which can be viewed, as you know, on YouTube. The numbers are as follows. The April 12, 2021 meeting had 92 views. The February 9th, 2021 meeting had 77 views. The December 17th, 2020 meeting had 72 views. The November 30th, 2020 meeting had 22 views. The November 2nd, 2020 meeting had 59 views. The September 25th, 2020 meeting had 51 views. The August 31st, 2020 meeting had 87 views, and our very first meeting on August 11th, 2020 had 193 views. The data collected has been previously shared with the CACE's members on May 12th via email. Is there any discussion regarding any of the information I just provided?
Well, other than we've gotten less interesting as time has gone on, apparently. But we can change that, obviously.
We're moving up though. We're on an upward.
We had a high water mark, and then
Yeah.
we're certainly roller coastering. But interesting, unique page views for the status report, 1,000. We'd love to certainly have that number higher, but even with over 1,000 unique page views, I think it says that beyond this group, perhaps beyond the employees within the county, there was some readership, some viewership, the public at large. We'd love to see the number higher, but I'm still encouraged that that the number did get above 1,000. Any other responses to either the viewership from our public meetings or the page views from either the website or the status report? What was the first number, the 4583?
That was the number of folks of unique page views to the Fighting Structural Racism webpage.
To the webpage, right?
Yes.
I'm sure there are folks who are more adept at marketing than I am who probably have some response to these analytics. Any comments at all? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, Chair Taylor, with your permission, I was going to skip the recognition of Juneteenth as a county holiday since our county executive shared some details regarding that, other than just to say that our county executive did take the lead in proposing this ordinance and recognizing this holiday as a paid county holiday. And after much debate, county council did adopt it. So we are, as everyone said, thankful for Executive Budish for stepping out and doing that. But with your
And
permission, I'll
absolutely,
skip that.
and the county executive certainly through me did reach out to the CACE as well to talk through it. And of course, Kirk Bird was involved in the discussion. So no, thank you for the upfront thinking on the subject, and certainly just asking our opinion on the issue as well. So it was, in my view, done the right way to get to this point. So thank you so much for that.
I might
Okay.
also add, if that's okay, that council and we discussed adding to the legislation, and at council's initiative, we ended up also including giving employees time if they wanted to work on election day. So that will help the Board of Elections. It'll help the public and support elections, voting, which is so important as well.
Yes, that was actually in my talking points. And as the county executive has said, the same piece of legislation, the county has authorized county employees to serve as precinct election day officials on election day without the loss of the employee's regular compensation. So those county employees who elect to serve as precinct election day officials for election day will receive compensation paid, the same compensation that is paid to other precinct election day officials, in addition to their regular daily pay. So to encourage them and work collaboratively and collectively with the Board of Elections.
Thank you both, Clerk Bird and County Executive, and we should probably move on. So more of your talking
Yes, sir.
stolen. Right.
The Department of Equity and Inclusion. During our last meeting, we discussed the ordinance establishing the Department of Equity and Inclusion, and I shared that it was introduced to County Council on April 13th, 2021. Well, that ordinance was discussed, it was debated during 2 committee meetings and a full council meeting, and ultimately the ordinance was adopted during the May 25th, 2021, County Council meeting. The existing Office of Procurement and Diversity has been dissolved, and in its place, there are now 2 departments, the Department of Equity and Inclusion and the Department of Purchasing. The new Equity and Inclusion Department will focus on equity-related issues in contracting, as highlighted in the recent disparity study. The department will also work with the Department of Human Resources to develop and to implement programs and trainings to build a culture of equity with respect to race, gender, and sexual orientation throughout county government. The legislation also directs the Department of Equity and Inclusion to consult with us, the Citizens Advisory Council on Equity, to evaluate the recommendations of the disparity study and provide advice to the executive regarding the implementation of the disparity study's recommendations. Also to monitor the effectiveness of the implemented recommendations and report to the executive and council at least once a year. Additionally, the department will serve as an ombudsman with regard to the county's equity initiatives and develop metrics and reports regarding MWBE contracting goals. Are there any questions or discussion about the new Department of Equity and Inclusion?
I'd like to just pause here for a moment, Clerk Bird. Certainly we know the goals of the organization, of those 2 split organizations. Can you tell us if there's been any movement at all? And if it's still in process, we understand, but movement in terms of how close to action these departments are.
So I can start and I'll ask the executive to chime in. As I said, the ordinance establishing the department was just passed at the May 25th council meeting. So that set up the department. They still have to, they've selected internally a leader of the department, but that leader, I believe, has to go through council confirmation and be approved by council. Is that correct, Executive Budish? There is a confirmation hearing. That is correct. So that has to happen. And then once that's happened, the budget has to be set, and then she can start hiring, firing, and setting up things in place. I have worked very closely and I'm continuing at the executive's request to offer support and guidance, not only as a liaison with CACE, but also as someone who, during a prior administration, created an office and set that up. So I've been sending this person who's been identified sort of information and things and sort of helping as I can. But as far as actual movement, we're at the very beginning stages, Chair Taylor. Executive Buttigieg, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Well, before he adds, I asked the question in part because I'm hoping, in addition to getting their legs under them and all the internal things that have to be done right away, that one of their first duties is to meet with either a subcommittee of this body or the full CACE, just because we helped in its creation, right? We can't say we were responsible, but helped in its creation. So it'd be wonderful before major actions are taken, just to hear once again the plan, so that it feels like it has some resonance with this group. Not approval, obviously we don't have authority, but we'd love for some agreement, or at least a sense that this is comporting with so many of the ideals that we've espoused from the start.
Chair Taylor, I will make sure that does occur, and I will keep that on the radar, and I will definitely invite her once the confirmation hearing happens, and assuming that she is confirmed, to come and, at your suggestion and whatever you decide, whether it's to a smaller group or to one of our public meetings, to speak with you all.
Okay, thank you.
And I would think, I have talked to her. I think she would be very happy to get all of your input as to how you all would like to see the department move forward.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that department, either procurement or CPs? Both interwoven, of course. Okay, thank you.
I'm going to ask that the minutes also reflect that Sheila Wright has joined us, so welcome, Sheila.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to move on now to the RFP for the countywide employee diversity, equity, and inclusion training. As I've mentioned previously, 2 members of the CACE and I participated in the diversity, equity, and inclusion training RFP selection panel, and we reviewed 3 responses. A smaller work group, which I am a member of, has been assembled to work through the next steps of the selection process. However, since the selection process is still in progress, there are no additional updates that I'm at privy to say at this time. Once the selection process is complete, I can provide further details, but I just wanted to sort of circle back on that for now. So is there any discussion regarding that process? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on. As you may recall, Cuyahoga County has an internal equity commission which meets monthly. The last commission meeting was held on May 20th, 2021. During that meeting, each member of the commission, and there are 5 of them, provided an update on their agency's equity efforts. There was also an update on racial equity and inclusion training RFP process, and the members discussed whether or not they wanted to continue meeting monthly or meeting every other month. They ultimately decided to continue meeting monthly based on all of the work they believe that is going to be associated to the RFP and to the Department of Equity and Inclusion. Are there any questions about that? Okay, I'm going to move on because I'm going to make our chair proud that I'm getting through this lengthy agenda, hopefully in a way that maximizes our time. I had the privilege of accompanying Executive Buttigieg to an event with the United Pastors in Mission about 2 weeks ago. That organization's mission includes working with political and civic leaders to contribute to a forward-looking community for sustainable growth, as well as to restore trust in government. During our visit, the county executive addressed the county's work in the equity space, and he afforded me the opportunity to provide a high-level overview of the Citizens Advisory Council on Equity's work to date. I wanted you all to know that I did that. The audience was extremely receptive and appreciative of the work that the county is doing, and especially of the work that CACE is doing in their efforts. They even asked for me to send them some of our reports and other things, which I've done. So I wanted to update you all about that. Any discussion or questions? Okay. Prior to concluding my part of today's meeting, I'd like to provide an update on Laura and my continued efforts to utilize the county's GARE membership. Laura and I participated in the GARE's 365 webinar and the annual conference. The May 365 webinar meeting included a presentation by GARE co-founder Julie Nelson regarding the GARE framework. She explained the framework serves as an opportunity to implement national effective practices by normalizing, organizing, and operationalizing conversations regarding race. Ms. Nelson discussed a 3-phase roadmap for getting started with equity work. The first phase is context setting and assessment. The second is building skills. And the third is implementation through pilot projects, action plans, and organizing for accountability. Resources and templates for project planning were shared with the group and are available in the GARE portal. The GARE's annual conference was held from May 19th to May 21st. The 3-day event included presenters and breakout sessions regarding equity-related topics. Laura and I both attended many of the sessions, although honestly, Laura attended quite more than I did. Days 1 equity events included a panel discussion regarding the impact of government on racial equity work and included governmental leaders from across the country who discussed the significance of the current climate and President Biden's executive orders regarding equity. Breakout session topics included sustainable DEI efforts, capacity building, the role of arts in decarceration, and leveraging survey results to create change. Day 2's events included breakout sessions and a keynote conversation. The breakout sessions included normalization and staffing training, using community storytelling to make decisions, restoring land to tribal nations through property policies, equity-driven COVID responses, and using GIS technology to drive equity decisions. The keynote session was a discussion between Race Forward Senior Vice President and Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Nicole Hannah-Jones, creator of the 1619 Project, regarding the need to confront our history on race honestly to move towards a racial reckoning. Day 3's events included a panel discussion and breakout session. The panel's discussion featured Heather McGee, author of the book, The Sum of Us, What Racism Cost Everyone and How We Prosper Together. Also included on the panel was Dennis Chin, Vice President of Narrative Arts and Culture at Race Forward, Carmelin Malalis, Commissioner of the NYC, New York City Human Rights Commission, and Dr. Deartarjan Skaroza, Executive Director of Racial Equity at LA County. The panel discussed the intersection of racial justice and democracy. The breakout sessions on day 3 included topics such as budget equity tools, social vulnerability data use in COVID responses, and community-driven planning of racial equity work. Overall, my impression was that the conference was informative and included a diverse array of topics regarding equity work. As I mentioned, Laura and I attended the conference, with, of course, Laura attending more of the sessions than I was able to. And we both are here and available to answer any questions or discuss anything further that you'd like to discuss. Okay. Moving on, Chair Taylor, should I?
Please. Because I don't think people want to know why Laura was able to attend more of the sessions than you, so we will.
Because I'm very busy. I was out with the clergy with Armand, talking to the clergy people, right? County Executive Budish?
Right, very good.
As I mentioned during the last meeting, Chair Taylor and Member Gullett were invited to speak at a National Health Equity Summit regarding the CACE's work. Chair Taylor, I know Member Gullett is unable to join us today. Would you like to share some details of the event with the members?
Just briefly, it was a follow-on conversation from a discussion that Dr. Gullett invited me into with the American Hospital Association this past winter. And because she did such a nice job in that discussion, they invited us both back to talk through this issue around how counties and communities are responding to the health equity issues. So that discussion was pre-recorded and then played on a pre-recorded basis to the conference, I believe last week. And once again, Heidi, because she lives this stuff, knows it, and is just a great representative for all things around healthcare and the disparities created within the system, she received great comments. My role was just to talk about the work of the CACE, and I believe we accomplished that. We were partnered with a group out of Milwaukee because they will argue in that community they were the first to declare, following the events of 2020, racism a public health crisis, and they would also argue that they have had measures in place well before this to deal with these issues around healthcare disparities and health inequities. They have a great story to tell. They have a lot of passion around it. So as I mentioned, we were partnered in the discussion. So in the end, it was just one more opportunity to tell our story on a broader scale, a national scale in some ways. And the feedback that continues to flow in from these two sessions we've had has been positive. I know Heidi has gotten calls and comments. People ask the question, how have we gotten so far so quickly, including the report writing? And then they're also pretty proud of, even though they don't know you, pretty proud of all of you, the 16 or 17 of us who volunteer our time, because this is so important, because we are so committed to making our community better, even with, as I said, all the other time pressures that are in our lives. So that's the part that's important to me as we have these continued discussions around healthcare inequities and all the disparities that are present. But again, Heidi is the star of the show when it comes to these discussions for us. But we're both grateful. So I'll offer that gratitude on her behalf as well. Any questions? Did anyone, I'd be stunned if any of you said you watched it. Did anyone tune in? All right, thank you. I didn't want to be stunned today. You have better, certainly things to do, but it is interesting to hear, at least on a limited basis, some of these discussions. Okay.
Chair Taylor, just so you know, it is recorded and I do plan to listen to it this week, although I didn't see it live, but I will communicate with you when I do listen to it.
Okay, it's highly entertaining, yes.
Why don't we move now into the subcommittee chair reports? I will turn to Ms. Member Pierce Lee. Do you want to start us off with the Criminal Justice Subcommittee report?
Yes, the Criminal Justice Subcommittee has continued to have interviews with various individuals from organizations related to this area. We continue to gather data, reports, and we will be meeting in person tomorrow to begin dissecting the information we have, specifically more around the juvenile justice area at this point, and then setting some priorities as we move forward. And then the next step will be to work with the other subcommittees to see where the intersectionality is around a lot of what we are hearing, whether it's around housing and social services and things that need to be provided. But we will be begin to set some priorities to look at policies and some actions that we'd like to take further. And our two other committee members are here, Reverend Chalker and Rabbi Caruso, if you have any input.
That sums it up great. Ms. Lee, I'll just say that I'm looking forward to meeting with the group for the first time. We're meeting in person tomorrow. So we'll have an opportunity to crunch some of the conversations we've had. What we've found is because we've had to rotate off of our meetings so quickly, we haven't had the good enough chance to really process the conversations. So we all deemed it a good idea to meet. I think we felt some serious relevancy in the issues of juvenile justice at this point. So looking forward to digging in with Pastor Chalker and Mr. Stokes as well.
Okay, thank you. Chair Taylor, do you want to present?
Yeah, how about I just quickly talk about the Health and Healthcare Subcommittee. But before I do, just as Ms. Maccabee and Ms. Sidnor are part of the work effort with the city on these issues, Dr. Gullett has been asked as well to be a participant in the City of Cleveland Work Group, one of those sessions, because of the authority with which she, presents this work. But as she mentioned in a note, she remains committed to the work of the CACE and committed to chairing this committee. And as we've discovered, when we have others who are part of this work in other work groups, there's a learning that takes place, and there's a benefit that is provided to us all. So know that Heidi has an expanded set of duties, if you will, on this subject. But with regard to the work, the Collaborative Community Health Assessment and Improvement Planning Work Group has been meeting to plan the next Cuyahoga County cycle, the 22 through 25 cycle, which includes all the 5 hospital systems, both the health departments, the multiple community organizations. Those 5 subcommittees are now working. This is the collaboration working on starting a renewed focus on the data, the community engagement, among other things. That work will inform the CACE efforts, and members are always invited to participate. We'll have Heidi send out, or someone send out a note to talk about the days that are available for participation. As she indicates, she's continuing to collaborate with the county Health and Human Services area on multiple overlapping topics, including some recent conversations she's had with David in that area. The mapping work, Merriman, the mapping work with Peter, Dr. Hovman also is still in process. That includes a new small group that will focus on health and healthcare specifically. And once again, she extends the invitation to all CACE members to participate if you'd like to. And just as Ms. Pierce Lee indicated, more interviews are about to occur over the coming months for the Health and Healthcare Subcommittee. That is her report, unless there are questions. Okay.
Member Chair McShepard, would you like to provide an update on the Equitable Quality of Life Subcommittee's work, please?
I would, but right on cue, my dog started barking, so bear with me. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all. Things have been moving forward with the Quality of Life Subcommittee, mainly focusing on housing issues. Again, we had a great meeting with Colleen Cotter from Legal Aid, who shared with us information on right to counsel and encouraged us to perhaps look at ways that we could support that legislation, along with eviction ceiling, which I guess has gotten some leverage in housing court here in the Cleveland area. And eviction ceiling essentially allows individuals to have any record of an eviction sealed permanently after 5 years. So we talked about that. Colleen let us know that Legal Aid would be more than willing to work with us in any capacity to look further into any of those topics. We also had a great meeting with Mark McDermott and Emily Lungard, who are, of course, leading a very powerful housing coalition in Cleveland. They're with the Enterprise Foundation, I'm sorry. And we had a couple of interesting discussions with that particular group. One, they were very excited to know, and I don't know if there might be an update yet, but they were very excited to know that the county was actually considering both income source protection and pay to stay legislation. We let them know that things were moving forward, that the county law department was looking into both of those. And I haven't gotten word yet that that's final, but I know that wheels are turning, and perhaps we'll hear more about that in the next, by the next meeting. In addition, they asked us to consider supporting Senate Bill 158, which is actually an eviction expungement bill that's being battered about in Columbus. It's in the Senate right now, and the suggestion was that perhaps CACE or the county could offer proponent testimony to support that legislation. And that's something that we are looking further into as we speak. And they also suggested that we keep in mind that there's an eviction moratorium. The eviction moratorium will end in the state of Ohio July 30th. So all the more reason to be more mindful of the needs of tenants. And we talked about lots of other programs that are out there that are being kicked around that our committee will be looking into, including landlord incentives and those types of things, because landlords do need support or incentive to want to work with some of these populations that we've talked about. They need help with home repair grants and things of that nature that are out there as available. So things are moving, lots of discussions, lots of people are watching this work very closely and excited to know again that the county might be releasing information about legislation as it relates to income source protection and pay to stay. And just glad to see that, you know, things are moving forward, and we'll keep you all posted as we learn about any developments. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report, unless I don't know if Mr. Ruiz is on the call or if anyone has any questions.
I'm on the call, but nothing to add.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good report. Active as always, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Member McShepherd, Chair McShepherd.
Yes.
I do have some follow-up information that Laura's going to send to you from Colleen that may be helpful as well.
Okay, fantastic.
That I've also shared with the executive.
Very good.
Okay. Subcommittee Chair Cavanis, would you like to provide us an update on your subcommittee's work, please?
Sure. Before I do that, I do want to also welcome Mr. Shoemate to this group. We've had the pleasure of working together, I guess, in many different capacities on my end, and you know, all of the interactions, all the insights that you've been able to bring to the table have been invaluable. I hope that you will be joining my committee. I trust that's going to be the case.
Wait a minute, not so fast, not so fast.
I'm recruiting them, Randy. So definitely looking forward to it, and hopefully we could have a conversation in the near future. But you know, everyone certainly provides a unique perspective and adds a ton of value, and I think sort of you fit that bill as well. In terms of a report, you know, just like everyone else, continuing to have interviews with key individuals. In terms of, you know, procurement, continuing to monitor how that is evolving and getting built out. We're still planning to send a letter on behalf of our group to the community. Thank you to Janice for allowing the county to use that platform to at least begin to communicate what the changes mean for our business partners. You know, education is something that's a bit newer for us, and trying to really better understand how the county can play a role, knowing that it doesn't have direct influence or direct decision making, but how can it be sort of a convener to impact systems change on the education level. So I've been working closely with Habiba on some cases, figuring out how we can, you know, get youth, I guess, better represented in this space. You know, I've brought up in the past in terms of you know, racism and reparations, you know, monitoring different programs across the country. I think Oakland, Illinois, monitoring those, and really going back to what Danielle was sharing. You know, how do we approach this work in a more sort of reparative approach? I don't think that happens overnight. I think that it's something that we have to monitor and sort of build on based on insights that we're getting through our work, but certainly something that we have to be aware of, that's an issue. So, you know, again, we're still working to schedule additional meetings and figuring out how we can come up with our sort of second phase of recommendations, insights for the county. So I'm not sure if anyone else from our committee has anything to share.
Okay, thank you, Chair Cavanagh. Subcommittee Chair Grimes, would you like to provide an update on your subcommittee's work, please?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Our subcommittee had an opportunity to meet in the last several weeks. Thank you to Stephen, Mr. Cavanagh, for joining us for a portion of our agenda. Our big buckets of work continue to be recruitment of new members. So just throwing that out there, if there are folks who are interested in joining us, we welcome you. We are continuing to refine the youth toolkit and to determine who are the youth that we want to engage with that youth toolkit that would serve as a community conversations guide so that we can begin to secure youth voice around the impacts of structural racism. Our goals in engaging youth are to be kind of cast a wide net, so to speak. We don't only want to hear from young people who are most impacted by racism. We want to also hear from young people who have experiences from the white identities and gain their engagement there as well. So we've begun to compile a list of entities that we'd like to speak with and hope to be able to disseminate the toolkit and ensure that folks know how to use the toolkit and able to gather that information soon. We also are seeking to create a communication for minority business owners and entrepreneurs so that they better or are assured to understand the disparity studies executive orders and seeking to send a communication and something consumable, easily consumable and shareable that can be sent to community members who are business owners, minority business owners and entrepreneurs. Let's see, we are beginning to talk about how we share the findings and themes from the community conversations that were held last fall with community members. So those folks who engaged, they know kind of what we learned from that. So more to come on that front. We've also determined we will revisit a community survey that can be accessible to community members via the website in an ongoing way so that we have a means of kind of collecting ongoing data via the website. And we also would like to promote the CACE public meetings. And while the data we heard was appreciated, we want to grow those numbers of community members who are tuning in for these meetings and have a proposal to include information about our public meetings via the county's social media communications on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I believe also.
Thank you.
Questions for Habiba? Well, let me say this. Thank you for the request that you made for others to join your committee. If we do the math, it's pretty straightforward. There are 17 of us total. We have 5 subcommittees, so we can do just a little bit better than 3 people per committee. 2 will have 4. So I say that in this context. We all signed up to be a part of this, but several months ago when we finished the bylaws or regulations, there was a stagger created around the year in which your term ends or a new term will start. Those conversations will have to take place, of course, with county council and the county executive around reappointments. But because we're approaching at least a 1-year anniversary in August, people will have that as a consideration. I'd like for you to think about committing, fully to one of these, as we get to this anniversary, to one of these committees. So we have at least 3 show up at all times. And then, as I mentioned, there will be a remainder. But I also would ask folks, not for every meeting, but to sign up for at least one other committee that you can get to every 3rd meeting or every whatever number meeting, but make it a point to, as Stephen just did, make it a point to join a discussion for another committee, give the committee chair the courtesy of, or Laura or Naila, the courtesy of suggesting you'll show up and do that. Just show up, because there's enough work for all of us and more than enough, obviously, to do. So just extend ourselves for this next year as we get through not only the report that this is the next comment, that we will publish sometime late summer, a smaller, shorter report, and then the other that's due by the end of 2021. So with respect to the report, while it shows semi-annual here, we'll give everyone a break, of course, through the July 4th holiday, but we'll try to get something in, again, a more condensed form to the public in August, and if not August, before the middle of September. Just an update, as you've heard me say many, many times before, just an update on the work. And it could just be a chronicling of things, but expect from Naila, Laura, and myself, just what the expectation is from a formatting standpoint. We're not going to put a lot of pressure on folks for this report, but I would say, if you didn't have an active role in writing before, back to that point, assist and aid the subcommittee chairs to help in this chronicling effort that we're going to put forth, because we all signed up and we all have a role to play. So a few things, what I've said: yes, we've got an anniversary of our existence coming up when we were all confirmed. Yes, there will be, or could be, a shuffling, if you will, of the deck of sorts. I'm asking all the subcommittee chairs if they don't mind to stay on for at least one more year. We would like to have better engagement in terms of committee participation. And we're also asking that you extend yourselves a little bit to at least sit in on some conversations that aren't necessarily your primary committee, because you will all contribute in an important way to those discussions. I will pause there. You've heard a few things, including the expectation around this next report. So if there are questions, certainly please feel free to ask them.
Hi, Chair Taylor. I'm not going to react exactly to what you were speaking to, but I agree wholeheartedly and want to participate and continue to participate as I have. But just rewinding to the conversation, some of the reports that Naila had shared with us about she and Laura Black attending a lot of these DEI conferences and opportunities. I would say it sounds so amazing, and thank you for giving of your time and the hours you spent during these conferences and these learnings. I have like an immense, and I bet the group does, immense trust in you in terms of your discernment of what was valuable from these particular outings. And it would really be, be interesting to me, I don't know if I want to speak for the group, for like some kind of executive summary or presentation about what you found to be most helpful. We know that trainings can be good and they can be bad, they can be effective and not effective. I would really be curious to hear what takeaways, and again, I'm not putting you on the spot now, but at some point, some takeaways from these conferences. If they're archived somewhere else, forgive me, and maybe I didn't hear that, but I think it really would be helpful for the group to learn from you, because you have a unique perspective on what you feel like are the best takeaways. How can we learn from them and incorporate them into our learnings and reports eventually? I hope that made sense.
So I think it did, Rabbi, other than, I tried to provide that sort of high level executive summary of what the conference was about. They are archived, the different sessions. Laura, are they? I believe they are archived. And obviously they're concurrent sessions, so we didn't attend all of them, which is why I tried to frame it in sort of a higher level. I think there are other events that I have attended that I found more valuable to the work that we're doing here, or more directly correlated to the work that we're doing here. And those are usually events, quite honestly, that some of you on this panel have spoken on. So Danielle, I think it was you who did the Real Talk. Did you do one of the Real Talk events? I believe that I watched. I'm looking at Laura. Danielle, are you there?
Yes, I did one of the events that you attended.
Yeah, and I thought that was great. I try to attend a lot of the Real Talk events. I try to attend most of the City Club events that are on point, which I also think are great. There's Go Live for Equity. And I can continue to share some of those events with the subcommittees. Happy to provide high-level overviews of those, but I would really probably look to more of what's going on, not sort of GARE related. Did that answer your question, Rabbi? Is that helpful?
That is helpful.
Okay.
That really is. And, we value your input. I mean, you're at a perch that's very unique. So I guess I just want to throw in there that, if there's any time where you want to share with us anything you believe we need to hear or we should hear, we're open to it. If there's, I know you always bring particular learnings to our attention in emails, but I just want to, I want to continue to stoke those fires, and we really appreciate all the kind of background work you're doing here.
Yeah, no, and thank you for that, Rabbi, 100%. I mean, I just recently listened to a podcast that I actually brought to the attention of the executive, as well as the woman who is taking, hopefully going to be confirmed for the new department, because that podcast was exceptionally informative, and thought it would be informative to her work in setting up a Department of Equity and Inclusion, because it looked at the work that had been done in Tacoma, Washington around the same issues, as well as the city of Houston, which was involved in a 20-year lawsuit after their disparity studies. So things like that, I do try to, even if I'm not sharing them directly with us, at least reach out to the equivalent on the county side who can be helpful. And I will start doing more of looping you in. I try to, with Laura's assistance, send you some of the things that I attend and I listen to when I can. A lot of them, unfortunately, are not live because I still have to do the day job that the county executive expects me to do. But I do try to do
Sure.
the other stuff, and we'll continue.
Oh, that, yeah.
Yeah, that other little job over here. But I will continue to do that, and know that any information I can provide, I am happy to do so, as is Laura. So we'll continue doing that. So thank you.
I don't want to take up more time except to ask for if you're comfortable sharing that podcast and the episode. I know I'd be interested in listening.
100%. I will send that out. The
Thank
one
you.
about the one that I just said, and it's only an hour long, so it wasn't even that lengthy. So I'll send it out. Either under me or Laura will send it to you guys.
Okay, so before we announce the date of the next meeting and adjourn, we obviously have the county executive here. He's been on the entire meeting. If you, county executive, if you have anything you'd like to request of or ask of this council, certainly feel free. And for council members, we've had some good questions to the county executive. If there's something that is on your mind, you'd like to ask the county executive to consider going forward, certainly that is an option available to you as well. Before we get to those two things, you know by now, I like this to be as participatory or participative. I'd like everyone to participate. So for those who have not had a voice in the discussion today, if you have anything you'd like to offer in any way, and I won't call names, but beyond the subcommittee chairs, are there any thoughts from folks, whether directed to the county executive or otherwise?
Chair Taylor, Glenn, just wondering, and again, just not sure historical or plan going forward, but this council would have a good sense of, I will say best practices or, things that Clerk Bird shared regarding podcasts, things that she hears. I mean, is there a kind of repository or a way to share from a resource standpoint to the community, things which this council may feel are useful in framing and understanding and furthering equity in the work But even as our county executive, began to share about Juneteenth, right? Are there events and activities that are even forward going, which we could somehow promote, encourage participation? And again, I would just think that everyone on this council probably knows of multiple events or resources, and how might we gather those and then share those?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. That's in part the big job that Habiba has in her role, the communications and the outreach to the community. And we have talked about, even in Stephen's committee, how we share not just the events, but all the things that are important to procurement, business owners. How do you communicate the strength of these executive orders that were signed by the county executive to a group? How do you communicate in pieces and parts, specific elements of our study? So we agree, we're still trying to get our stride, if you will, with respect to communication, but there's so much information out there. Putting it on our website alone isn't necessarily as effective as it might be. So we have to be more thoughtful, more proactive around it. But I'm agreeing with you. A lot of detail, a lot of data, a lot of useful and good information. Putting it out in public in a way that creates some stickiness, or at least some reception for that information is important. So help us with that. Thank you for that good suggestion. You're hired.
I would just add, Chairman Taylor, that Laura Black and Clerk Bird do a great job of sending all of us articles and interesting readings from time to time. I certainly remember reading lots of helpful documents from them. I did want to ask a question, if I may, maybe a suggestion even, and I'd imagine Chairman Taylor and Danielle Sitnor would be the right two people to decide on this. As we near the 1 year mark, I wondered if it might be helpful to perhaps have the two of you and maybe Marsha Maccabee, since Danielle and Marsha sit on the cities of Cleveland's committee that would be similar to this, declaring racism as a public health crisis, to perhaps compare notes. I don't know if there might be ways that we could support each other's work or learn from each other or something like that. Maybe it's already happened, but just curious, Danielle, if you would have any thoughts about that, or Chairman Taylor, if you would have any thoughts about that. Just thought it might be helpful.
Good suggestion. Danielle, you have any thoughts?
So I, of course, was kicked out for whatever Randy just said. I was trying to get back in, so I missed it. I apologize.
He was asking if there's an ability to compare notes with all the work that you've been doing with the city, whether it's just you telling us that work, you and Marsha, or if we have a joint discussion. I don't know how it would work, right? The logistics of it.
Yeah, because both Danielle and Marsha Maccabee sit on both committees.
Right.
So I was just curious about that, Danielle, if you thought there might be some opportunity for discussion or comparing of notes. Did we lose her? Did she freeze again?
The question is really about how do we build efficiency so that the community is served. So
absolutely.
Danielle, can you hear us? But I got to tell you, in terms of one of the stills that you see when someone's frozen, this is a better one. So congratulations. I mean that just right, Danielle. I've seen some that don't work as well. So she's still.
It could be discussed later.
Okay. All right. Very good. Any other? But thank you for that, because it's important at this juncture. All right, County Executive, anything more you'd like from us or for us to consider?
Well, I can always talk, but it's a long time. I won't go too far. I just want to say I always learn a lot from listening to all of you. And I try to come away with something I've learned in particular. And today I learned that Nayla Bird is still doing her day job, she says. So in addition to all her other work.
You sound like that comes as a surprise to you.
Just joke. Total.
Okay, all right.
Hi,
You've gone on video, so that means something's coming. So let's hear it.
Yeah. So one, let me apologize for being late. I was on another call that ran over, as you know, often tends to happen with these calls. But I just wanted to offer an opportunity for folks to, you know, while we're having these meetings, to think about the greater impact that the work we are striving to do will have on folks that are not, you know, I've mentioned this before, you know, on folks that are not business owners, folks that are not kind of independently working for themselves, but you know, folks that go to a job and go work for somebody else on a day-to-day basis, and not just take into consideration the component of racism, but also, you know, classism and all of the other isms that you know, could potentially negatively affect working people. I spoke on the need to have someone from labor be represented on this committee, because labor is near and dear to me. And this is my personal opinion, is that we're kind of getting away from doing work that is going to ultimately impact the individual that goes to work every day. And I just want to, you know, be mindful of that. If my perception of what this group was intended to do or is supposed to be is different than that, you know, I can recognize that and, you know, make decisions accordingly. But I just wanted to bring it back to everyday working people and how and what can we do to impact their lives in a positive way and make those paychecks a little more functional for them in their day-to-day lives. So I just wanted to mention that. I will mute myself and let someone else speak.
Thank you for that, Yanela. You don't have to mute yourself nor turn off, well, too late, just turn off the video. Look, I think most of us we are thoughtful of it and we're mindful of it, but you know, we live in our own heads, so we may not think about it in the same ways on a day-to-day basis that you do, Yanela. But that voice, I hope, because I know for me, this is the case, that the importance of that voice, that perspective, those individuals you speak of, that hasn't been lost. We may not speak directly to it or articulately enough about it, but it hasn't been lost on me. So just as Habiba reminds us to keep the youth in these conversations, and we have to be reminded, it's important that you remind us of this as well, because we should be reminded, you know, from whence we came, you know, most of us. So I'm agreeing with you that that it is an important part of the conversation, a critical part of the conversation. And if we're not addressing it in the way that you think is important, check us, remind us, you know, of course, a professional way, remind us, and we will get back to what's important, because that is important.
Will do. Thank you.
I knew that invitation would go responded to, so absolutely. But please do. I see Danielle, you're back.
I am, and I think I'm unstuck.
Stationary.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, please.
Can you hear? Okay. Apologize for that. I heard you all, and I guess to respond to Randy's question, we had talked a couple of times about the best approach and whether it would make sense to take a subgroup from the Racism as a Public Health Crisis Committee from the city and a subgroup from our work through the county, and maybe do a joint conversation and see if that might be the best approach, or I think providing some of the written things that we are starting to pull together about how we're structuring our work, which is around like these 5 pillars that we've indicated as the primary focus areas. The one thing that I think is slightly different right now is the focus that we are putting within the Racism as a Public Health Crisis Committee through the city at trying to bring forth some recommendations around how the American Rescue Plan dollars should be utilized, and not necessarily even doing specific projects, but really thinking about how the city might implement an equity tool as a part of its ongoing process of dispersing any types of dollars and funds through the city. And so recognizing that it's going to be difficult to come up with very specific criteria by the time the city needs to make its recommendation on this pot of money, we're still thinking about the opportunity to just, as on a going forward basis, make that a part of the requirement, and how the city might think through that, or how council might think through that, because they're the ones that ultimately present the budget to the executive for approval. And so I would encourage the county to be thinking along the same lines, and that we may not be able to go line by line and say these dollars should be spent on this particular item, but could this committee also work to help the county think about a similar type of system as it's doing beyond just procurement, but really on a budgetary process? Or how can we look at the budget and say, how is it impacting structural and institutional racism? And how are the dollars that are going out into various neighborhoods and communities and projects and programs, whatever, arriving at having the impact that we want? And finally, not towards Randy's question, but to Chair Taylor's open, I guess, call for us to provide some thoughts or comments. The only other thing I would add to the discussion that I heard today is, how do we, again, with this committee, really start to try and influence the lived experience of people in the county? Because to me, the situation in Independence, and what I've seen from my contemporaries and folks that are saying Independence is 97% white and does not have a strong Black population. And so if we're talking about this from a lived experience of a person in the county, when we start to talk about systemic and institutional racism, what does it look like to be a person that lives in a neighborhood within the county that is that starkly contrasted from a racial, integration standpoint? And so while I know that the county specifically is not going to go in and say, do a better job with getting more diverse residents in your city, could that be a thing? As we're continuing to talk about our work while it's focused internally in the county, I think we also have to think about this conversation of, again, the lived experience of people, because to me, that is what people respond and react to. And one of the reasons that there's more focus on the decision that the county executive and the team had to make to repopulate people that were in the hotel is because people are paying more attention to the county government structure than they will that individual city.
Danielle, I'm sorry. I have a question for you regarding those dollars that you speak of. Is there a structure, a system, or some sort of communication that can be done with the city? I understand that council would play a role in kind of voting as to how some of those dollars are going to be distributed, but is there another outlet in addition to, or instead of the city council, that citizens can reach out to and say, hey, we think, since we don't have public comment, we think that these dollars should go toward XYZ. I have members who work for the city of Cleveland. They, they worked through the pandemic. Several of them worked at the airport, and hazard pay is a big issue, right? They weren't, offered any hazard pay. And I'm sure that there's other people that are not my members that have some thoughts around, now that the city has these dollars, how can we have a conversation about hazard pay for the folks who've worked, throughout a pandemic for the past year? So I was just wondering if there was any discussion about a system, format, structure for people to communicate their ideas and thoughts to the city around that particular issue.
Yeah, and just briefly, and we can maybe talk about it in more detail offline, but organizations, some are sending their requests directly to the administration, so to the mayor's office, and saying, this is how we believe you should use these dollars. Some are sending them to multiple council members. And so I would say the format that they come in, they've been varied. but there is a document I can share with you that's from Cleveland Neighborhood Progress that some organizations are kind of using as a template in terms of ways that they might structure recommendations to the city.
Okay, thank you. That would be incredibly helpful.
Sure.
Anything else from anyone? Okay. Laura, Naila, when is the next meeting scheduled?
So Chair Taylor, it's interesting you asked that. So as you know, we proposed tentative dates for meetings throughout 2021 and 2022, and those meetings would take place on the second Monday of each month. However, at this time, we need to await guidance from the state on whether or not the provision allowing public bodies to meet electronically will be extended past the July 1 deadline. It's currently part of the budget bill. And my understanding is that the House and Senate need to meet together to decide whether or not to extend that provision, because if it's not extended past July 1, then we will need to figure out how to meet in person.
Well, let's ask the question. I don't want to, just because we have extra time, take the time, but you guys cannot respond. But if you are okay meeting in person, I think we don't have to do it every time, depending on what the law provides or allows for. But there's certainly, I've used the word in this form before, there's dynamism that takes place when we meet in person, although there's a convenience that we clearly have in this setting. I am okay meeting in person. I think we should probably try one of those since we haven't had one ever as we've been assembled. But I would be okay if the planning was around an in-person discussion, unless the county offices aren't allowing visitors at this point. I don't know the answer to that question, at least in 20 plus numbers. Anyone have thoughts about meeting in person? Strongly opposed or maybe mildly supportive? Anyone?
So my thought about meeting in person, and I'm okay with that, is we probably couldn't do it for the July meeting because I would need to talk to Public Works. We need to find a space that is big enough for us all in the county building and find a time that works. And then with vacation schedules and other things with July, I don't know, meeting electronically makes it easier to do that if you're on vacation.
Maybe if you want to use your vacation meeting. So let me just see. I'm only going to ask one question.
Like we do. I mean, that's what Laura and I do all the time.
And I'll ask you, not everyone is on video, but I'll ask you if your strong preference is to, again, we don't know what the law or the state provisions will afford us an opportunity to do. If your strong preference is to meet virtually, I'd like to see at least a show of hands. No one is going to hold it against you, but just curious if that's your strong preference.
This is Yanela. I'm fine with meeting in person.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, I didn't see any strong preferences unless folks are just shielding their thinking.
If I could interject, sorry, Chair Taylor. I just got a message from one of the viewers that said both the House version of the budget and state version of the budget extended electronic public meetings until the end of the year.
Okay.
So it seems like we might be okay. So
I believe, Janice, and unless my information is incorrect, that provision was taken out of the Senate version of the budget bill that went to the House. But okay. I can verify.
Maybe we're safe and don't have to make a decision till July if it was extended. So maybe we could verify, and it might not be an issue yet.
All right. I don't want to, yeah, thank you. I don't want to sort of use time, especially if we don't know an answer, right? A final answer. However, I would say that I'm in favor, again, not every time, but I'm in favor of at least getting the group together just to talk through things in person if folks are open to it, or as many, if possible, many of you who would like to meet in person. So we'll leave it at that. More to come on the subject. What I'm hearing, though, is that we aren't going to schedule a July meeting at this point until we get more information. Is that correct, Naila?
That would be my suggestion, Chair Taylor,
Okay.
until we get definitive information about whether the public meetings can be held electronically based on the budget bill. And that has to happen likely this week. I think it has to be voted out because the legislators and county executive, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you're still on, having been one, they go on vacation, I believe, next week, Laura, is it? I think they break next week. So they got to do something this week on this.
Okay.
I just had a follow-up question. Do those public meetings, or do those meetings need to be public in terms of, can the public or will the public expect to be in the room with us?
Andrea Nelson Moore, I will defer to you. I believe so, but I'll defer to our legal representative who I see is on the call to answer that.
My presumption will be they would certainly have the option once it is opened back up.
Okay. I ask mainly because that also plays into the venue selection decision. We need a room not just big enough for us, but also general seating for the general public.
Correct.
Another consideration, and I don't know how you all feel about meeting with people who are not known to be vaccinated, but even if we all on this call are vaccinated, Randall's point is a good one, that the public can come in and you never know. So if that changes anybody's views.
It's a good point. Now, these will continue to be individual decisions for folks. Go ahead.
County Executive, should you also point out that the current status right now with our public space in the county buildings is if you're not an employee, if you are a visitor to the building, you still have a mask requirement in our county buildings. So you should know that, whether you're vaccinated or not. The non-mask requirement may just be for county employees who show proof of vaccination, but all visitors to all county buildings, which is where the meeting would have to be held, would be required to wear a mask as well as go through a temperature screening to enter our building. And so that, I believe, would include the 17 of you, not Laura and I or the executive.
And a mask is worn at all times as well.
It must be worn at all times, yes.
All right, well, that
As well as, and you cannot gain access into the building if your temperature is over 100 degrees.
Oh, you shouldn't be out anyway, but yeah.
Well, but if you are, people are. I mean, we get people turned away all the time, believe it or not.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Well, the clarity is quickly happening on this subject, right? Especially if you have to wear a mask the entire time, if you are fully vaccinated. Okay. All right. So we don't know. We spent a few minutes talking about what we don't know and won't know for a while, but it sounds like if permitted an opportunity, we will meet virtually. And that's the way it is. That's the way it is for now. So we get it. All right. But what you'll also get over the next several weeks, again, after the 4th of July, is a schedule that Naila, Laura, and I will put together, and others, the subcommittee chairs, talks about the expectations for this next report. And we'll get it done. Welcome again, Mr. Shoemate. Is he still? Yep, he's there in the upper left-hand corner on my screen. Welcome again, and thank you all so very much for your time. Unless, Naila, there's more? Is there more?
There's not, sir.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Chairman, can I call you right now for 30 seconds?
Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Take care. Have a good day.